I'm going to talk about steroid use among adolescents, the problems, and my solution. Many of the statistics of steroid usage are fairly predictable, but there are a few surprises. To start, there are approximately 1 million current or former steroid users in the United States alone. Of the 1 million, 25% are high school seniors. That means that of the 3 million or so high school seniors, a little under 1% of them are using steroids. 1% of my graduating class means that 2 of my peers are using anabolic steroids. Despite that over 50% of current or former steroid users are over the age of 26, the median age of users is 18. This means that half the user population is over the age of 18 and half is under the age of 18. If over half the population is over 26, but the median age is so much lower, there must be a gap in the ages of users. This means that high school age kids are using steroids. From there, it is not a huge jump to infer that high school sports play a huge role in the adolescent population using steroids. Because such a large part of the current and former abusing population is under the age of 18, something has to be done to intervene. Of the adolescents researched, aged 12 to 17, the median age was 15. Again, this means that half the population was above the age of 15 and half was below. The age of 15 is very key because that is a kid's freshman year of high school. Kids are trying to make JV teams or keep up with the varsity players as freshmen, and they look to steroids to help. One of the most shocking facts, in my opinion, is that 300,000 people used steroids in the past year, whether it be for the first time or not. This means that it is reasonable to assume that the 1 million total current or former users will continue to grow as time goes on. And because the total users will increase, we can assume the population of adolescent users will also increase. As we all know, there are numerous negative effects from the use of steroids. Abuse affects every single cell and system in your body in one way or another. It affects your blood by making your body develop cholesterol patterns associated with coronary heart disease and obstructing blood vessels. This obstruction of blood vessels can lead to stroke and heart attack. Similarly, steroids put a huge burden on your heart by increasing blood pressure and cholesterol. The liver, which is your body's filter, has a severe toll taken on it by steroids. Steroids can impair your liver functions and cause peliosis hepatitis, which are large cysts formed from blood that can rupture and cause your liver to fail. Steroids will also stunt one's growth, which is caused by the premature closing of cartilage-like growth plates in adolescence, along with increased rate of muscle strains and ruptures. On one's skin, acne will usually appear or increase along with other skin rashes. Steroids will also cause male baldness and striae, which are stretch marks. The immune system takes a huge toll due to shared needles. Shared needles lead to hepatitis B and C and HIV/AIDS. Psychologically, people on steroids tend to have mood swings, be more aggressive, be depressed, have psychotic episodes, and they also tend to have addictive personalities. We can now see how dangerous steroids can be and the numbers behind their use. But what is really the problem here? Adolescents are taking steroids for multiple reasons, and I'm here to explore the main root of the issue. First, the pressures put on them by all the factors around them. Obviously, high school can be an awkward time for many, and the pressures to perform or look good are not helping. Second, a lack of education. Kids are not educated on the impact of steroids on their bodies. They know it's wrong, and they know they can't get caught, but they do it anyways because they do not appreciate the damage it will do. Third, it is difficult to catch students using steroids because forcing them to take drug tests is unethical in most cases. Because people at this age are minors, it becomes a very sticky subject to force them to take a drug test, especially when there's no suspicion of drug use. And finally, the way society handles not only steroid use but substance abuse in general. I'm going to dive deeper into these 4 topics and use the presented data to show you my own solution to reduce the number of adolescents using steroids. We've all been through it. The desire to look cool, have many friends, be accepted by your peers and mentors. High school has a lot of pressures that are natural and unavoidable. Even the desire to look good or be fit, one could argue, is natural, but society sets the bar too high. Society's constant pressure on being unnaturally skinny or buff or attractive only adds more pressures to kids that don't really need it. No matter how unfortunate it is, body shape plays a huge role in the happiness of adolescence. Kids will go as far as starving or purging themselves to achieve an attractive body. This is highly correlated with steroid use. Of steroid users of all ages, 50% wanted to increase their size and 27% wanted to improve their appearance. Though these are statistics based on users of all ages, one can infer that the numbers of adolescents are similar, if not more dramatic. Certain sports by nature force kids to achieve a certain body size. Wrestling and swimming, for example, force kids to scrutinize their body and do whatever they can to achieve a certain weight or shape. Relatively speaking, peer pressure when it comes to steroid use is a non-factor. Only about 10% of adolescent users claim to have done so because their friends do it. This is both good and bad. Good in the sense that one kid making a mistake generally will not encourage others to do the same. but bad in the sense that kids are actually thinking about what they're doing and still making bad decisions, which leads me to my next point, the lack of knowledge that kids have on the subject of steroids. The lack of education on this subject is what I consider to be the biggest part of the issue. Whether it be incorrectly identifying benefits of steroids or other forms of faulty information, kids do not understand what they are doing when they use steroids. 12% of users incorrectly identified that steroids would increase their height, and 18% thought that steroids would improve their aerobic performance. Not only do people not know the severe side effects of steroids, but they are taking them to achieve things that are completely outside of steroid benefits. The top 5 information outlets for users in order are friends, television, muscle magazines, health professionals, and newspapers. The only reliable source of that group is a health professional, and it is 4th on the list. This shows that people are receiving information from sources that are either just as uneducated as them, or who are only trying to make money in any way possible. The lack of knowledge that users had over non-users was very minimal. This shows that in general, users have the same amount of knowledge as people who never even considered using steroids. As users are abusing steroids, they aren't realizing what is happening to their body, and they aren't learning anything from their mistakes. 24.7% of users reported that they had shared needles in the past 30 days, and this isn't even the most shocking part of my point. This number is actually an average. From the data in this survey, they have averaged the percentage of needle shares with HIV/AIDS education with the percentage without such education. Of the HIV/AIDS educated, only 18.9% of users have shared needles in the past 30 days. Of those without HIV education, a staggering 30.6% reported sharing needles. This shows that something as simple as education on HIV/AIDS can reduce dangerous behavior amongst users by over 33%. Imagine if every steroid user had HIV/AIDS education, that would mean that the number of users potentially contracting this life-threatening illness would drop by 10%. The third major issue here is how substance abuse as a whole is handled in our society. The war on drugs has criminalized drug users, but has obviously proven to be ineffective. The problems with the way our society handles substance abuse lies within a concept known as deterrence theory. Essentially, deterrence theory states that individuals will have a strong intention to perform a particular behavior if they have a positive attitude towards it, they perceive it as easy to perform, and they believe that important others would support their performance of the behavior. 3 main cause sources affect one's decision to break the law. These sources are legal sanctions, social sanctions, and self-imposed sanctions. Of those 3, self-imposed sanctions are the most significant. Within this definition, we can come to one conclusion. Self-imposed sanctions, because they are the most significant, are not stopping people from abusing substances. In the case of steroids, because it seems that we idolize athletes and the beautiful more than we punish the criminals, it seems like an easy choice to do whatever it takes to become a star athlete or have the best body. It is not a stretch to compare drug use to steroid use. Many of the behaviors exhibited by one are also exhibited by the other, and many steroid users use drugs, whether it be marijuana, alcohol, smokeless tobacco, or cocaine. So testing policy must be instated if steroid abusers are to be caught. The Saturn program in Oregon was an attempt at this testing policy, but is a major reason why we can't just simply test every athlete. The Saturn program stands for Student Athletic Testing Using Random Notification, and it involved schools in Oregon participating in research. The schools were allowed to decide if they wanted to require a drug test for students to participate in sports. At the surface, this sounds like a great way to cut down on drug and steroid use, but it actually failed to respect the rights of the students in a few ways. The Saturn program's biggest fault was the lack of informed consent. It failed to give the subjects, meaning the parents and students, proper information on what was going on. There was no description, no explanation on how kids were going to be chosen, no protocol for the action that would be taken for if a test failed, and no indication of whether the study was for survey research or for drug testing. The Saturn program also failed to uphold confidentiality. If the student were to fail a drug test, they would be suspended from their sport, and if they refused to take the test, then they would also be suspended from their sport. The lack of the subject's ability to refuse coerced them into taking part in the research, which is unethical. The program also only targeted athletes. Because only athletes were selected, only athletes could fail, which stigmatized the athletes. Finally, the impact on our society, the media, and our socialization. The ever-increasing pressure society puts on us to look good has severe consequences, especially in the world of adolescence. Research has shown that both males and females at the adolescent age are unhappy with their bodies, and that BMI has a direct relation with happiness. The Though men tend to use steroids more than women tend to use more body-shaping supplements. Men as a whole are divided pretty evenly on wanting to gain weight and wanting to lose weight. There's plenty of research that has been done on extreme weight loss, but there's very little that has been done about the effects of extreme weight gain. We don't really know the consequences of binge eating and excessive exercise, but at least in men, there's arguably an equally high chance of a man resorting to one of these than the other. Steroids as a whole feminize men. They lead to temporary sterility, they enlarge the breasts, and shrink the testicles. Other side effects include altered sex drive, increased risk of prostate cancer, painful erections, reduced levels of testosterone, abnormal sperm production, and increased levels of estrogen. The effects that steroids have on women are similar but opposite. Steroids tend to masculinize women. Steroids cause women to also be temporarily sterile. They lead to birth defects in future children, and the deepening of the voice. Some other side effects include increased risk of cervical and endometrial cancer, increased risk of osteoporosis, altered sex drive, changes in fat distribution, growth of facial and body hair, shrinkage of the breasts and uterus, clitoral enlargement, and menstrual irregularity. So finally, how do we solve this problem? It seems like I've laid out a lot of issues without many solutions. The solution is extremely simple: education. The data I've presented shows that, above all else, people are making bad decisions based on their ignorance. The fastest and most efficient way to destroy ignorance is to educate. All health classes in the United States should include steroid usage and show kids that steroids will destroy your body and that it isn't worth it. Also, kids in the education and athletics system need to be rewarded for their effort and not their success, to teach them that the journey is what is important and taking shortcuts will never benefit.